This small town produced a story so dark, it's hard to comprehend. Lee Ann Mangrum, a devoted mother, suddenly lost custody of her children, not just to her ex-husband, but to his new wife, Kimberly Mangrum. In her devastation, she had no idea it could get even worse. Worse than death itself. A form of betrayal unlike anything you've ever heard. A stepmother so manipulative, she slowly turned Leanne's own children against her, twisting their minds until the unthinkable became possible. And when investigators tried to uncover the truth, Kimberly's web of lies warped the timeline so completely that the case nearly fell apart. But in the middle of the confusion, one tiny, ordinary detail mentioned in passing broke everything wide open. How did a simple salad expose the truth? This is Tennessee Murder Trails. Retired TBI agents recounting their cases in an unprecedented look inside high-profile murders in Tennessee with Joe and Mike's 75 years of combined experience and Emmy-winning journalist Alex. Let's solve the murder of Lee Ann Mangrum.
This is a case entrenched in jealousy and hate, and nothing really appears as it seems. Tell us a little bit about the victim, Leanne.
Leanne was a single mother who basically was raised in a blue-collar environment. She worked, hourly wage jobs. She was also a teacher's aide. So she did everything she had to do to scrape by, and it was tough for her. It was tough being a single mother with two small children. They were involved in Little League. They were involved in cheerleading, so she was making sure she did everything she could to provide for them, to give them those opportunities. She was really a good mother. The sad thing is that it was twisted, and she was maligned in a way that really didn't define who Leanne was, and not only as a person, but as a mother as well.
She had been married young, divorced,
Right.
And it sounds like when the new wife came into the picture, everything changed.
That, Alex, is an understatement. This was a nuclear bomb of domestic violence. When her ex-husband remarried, Terry Sr. remarried Kimberly Mangrum. Kimberly had a history of volatile behavior. She had a history of transient lifestyle. And so she either ran from her problems, ran from anything that she didn't agree with that was going to hold her accountable. And she ended up in Fairview, Tennessee. And she met Terry Mangrum, and they ended up getting married. And the damage that she brought to that community, to that family, was something that I think I've never seen a case like this. I've never experienced or even read about somebody who could come in like a tornado and just be so destructive, physically, emotionally, and mentally.
When you talk about being a tornado, what did she do to make Leanne's life so difficult?
Well, it was a combination of things. It was from stalking to physical threats of violence to actual physical violence. To turning her children, her own children, against her, these two impressionable kids, to turn them against their mother in such a vile way, convincing them that their mother was less than human, I guess.
But Kimberly was successful. She was able to create this narrative, so much so that Leanne lost her children. She lost custody of her children. So this woman knew what she was doing. She was effective.
I read where the children also were so either threatened or indoctrinated that they were afraid. They wanted to talk to their father, but they were afraid to because of what she would do to them if they did talk to him about what was really going on behind the scenes.
I mean, there were reports that she burned them, that she took a hanger and sliced a little boy across the neck.
Yeah, he even said that she took a knife and held it to his throat. And so there was accusations of physical violence. We had no reason to deny that these occurred. I think that this was a ticking time bomb of violence, and it's sooner or later that Kimberly decided that she had an end game. and she was going to make sure that it was enacted. What made her get so obsessed with Lee Ann Mangrum in her life? Kimberly had an order that came down from the courts that they were transferring custody to the father and to Kimberly. And I think when that happened, she saw herself as their mother. And she decided that under no circumstances was Leanne going to take these children away from her. We learned that Kimberly, she had a child that she lost parental rights to in North Carolina. So she wasn't going to let this happen a second time.
Everything came to a head on September 7th of 2002. How did you get that phone call?
I didn't get a phone call. It was on the afternoon of the 8th. I was driving home, and what made this case even more strange is her body was actually found in close proximity to my residence. But I was coming home. We had been to Tennessee Titans football game. Touchdown, Titans! And we were pulling in the road, going up to my property, to my house, and I saw some deputies pulled over on the side of the road at this. It was a common area. It was a local area where a lot of people would go swimming in the creek, Turnbull Creek, which was a clear water, really nice body of water, and it brought a lot of people out. And so I pulled up next to him, and I said, "What do y'all have? What's going on?" And he said, "Well, we were about to call you." And I said, "Really? Why?" He said, "We have a body down here."
What you find is this red Jeep, halfway submerged, and a woman with a white blouse pulled up, floating in the water.
Yep. What stood out was the Jeep was partially submerged. That creek it had deep holes, deep spots, but nothing that would totally submerge a vehicle.
Yeah, when you're looking at a scene like that, you're looking at also thinking of different manners of death. Okay, could this be someone who was intoxicated and got out in the creek and just, is it accidental? And it's then when you start looking at all the evidence and the different things around, whether it's in water, on the bank, but you're looking at everything that you can. And I understand there were things that stood out, pieces of evidence that made you probably think, this is more foul play involved right here. Something else is going on.
That's absolutely correct. That was something we thought about initially until we started really looking at the scene.
What was evident? What did you see?
There was broken shards of glass on the creek bank in close proximity to a large clump of hair that was consistent in color of our victims, of Leanne. It was in the mid-afternoon, early evening when I got there, and we brought down light towers, and we worked all through the night on this because we wanted to make sure that we had all the evidence that we could find on this creek bank. And of course, your best piece of evidence oftentimes is the body.
Yeah, you probably had to get in the water yourself and actually photograph the victim from different angles while you're in the water.
Yeah, I did. And the one thing that stood out that I think about now more than looking back on the case is how just little things could have changed environmentally, could have changed this whole direction of this case. And what I mean by that is there was a regular current that came through this creek, but the Jeep kind of blocked the current and the water flowed around the Jeep, okay? And this was about 3 foot of water, 3.5 foot of water. And her body was stuck in this pool, this eddy, I guess you'd call it, between the Jeep and the current, and it didn't move. If she would have been another foot further away from that vehicle, the current would have taken her downstream, and we probably wouldn't have found. We'd have had an abandoned vehicle, and we'd have been probably searching for a body for maybe that afternoon, that night, that morning. I don't know. It would have destroyed evidence. It would have changed the whole demographic of this scene and the investigation. So that was, we look back on that and just think another foot, and it could have been a problem for us.
So you process the crime scene, and what's your first step after that?
Well, we had the registration. We took the registration out to identify who it was, and it came back to Lee Ann Mangrum, the registration on the vehicle, the tag. And so we basically say, look, here's her residence. We feel like something terrible has happened here on this creek bank. So we send over a deputy. I asked a deputy to go to this address and check the house and see if anyone's home. We're looking at possibly making notification or just to get somebody in the family that can can identify who Leanne was. So they go to the house, and we get a call back through the radio that the house appears to be ransacked and to be some sort of forced entry into the house. So we said, sit on it. We'll send somebody out there from TBI and the sheriff's office, send another detective out there to assess that and to make a determination what we needed to do. Well, of course, we're thinking we've got crime scene number 2. And it turned out that was the case. What caused her, what put her in a situation that brought her down on this creek bank? Who's closest to her? And so once we found out through some communication that her mother lived in the next town over in Fairview. So I go to the house, and 2 reasons. I thought, well, we could make notification that we think we found her daughter, and also to, again, find out who she was, who she associated with, what was her lifestyle like. Was she a high-risk victim? Was she a low-risk victim that just was in the wrong place, the wrong time, a possible kidnapping? And so I remember walking into the house in the early morning hours, and the mother is awake, and I remember looking over on the mantle in the house, in the fireplace, and I saw a picture, and it was Leanne. So I knew that absolutely this was Lee Ann Mangrum, and so I told her that what we had found, and she was distraught, and it was one of those that we see a lot, and you try to console, you try to explain the best you can of what had happened. But I remember asking her, I said, well, can I ask you if you know anybody in her life that would want to do something like this to Leanne, who would it be? And it didn't take her 1 second. She said her ex-husband and his new wife, especially the new wife, she has to be involved in this.
So here we go.
Mm-hmm. Here we go. And it's calling for a long afternoon, long night, long morning, and so we determined we're going to have to figure out where the ex-husband was. And we decided the best way to do that, because she tells us about the children living with the ex-husband and his new wife, that they now have custody of these 2. The girl was 11 and the son was 14 at the time.
So did you go and meet and do a notification to the ex-husband as well?
Yes.
How did that come about?
It was strategic, of course,
Yeah.
because once we heard this from the mother, we felt like this was another opportunity to try to get information from him. So we go to the house, and they volunteered, especially the stepmother, the Kimberly Mangrum volunteered. Well, we saw Leanne. She came to our house last night. She was here early in the morning, woke us up, and pulled in with an unknown white male and asked for some Klonopin, which I learned now that it was part of the ruse to paint her as a drug addict, as someone that was disheveled, that had all these issues in their life, that was not a responsible person and a responsible parent. And this is another thing that I thought was a little strange. And as time went on, we started putting it all together, of course. But did you get a vehicle description? What were they driving? What did this guy drive? Because we're like, okay, we got to figure out who this guy is. So we had no evidence that the stepmother was involved in this murder at this point. So, what was he driving? Well, it was a dark-colored Mustang with I think a Harley Davidson license plate on the front.
Wait a minute. Didn't Kimberly own a Mustang? And she's saying that a Mustang showed up?
She did, and she does. The vehicle that she drove was consistent in description. Now, you ask yourself, why would she do this?
Because if her car was seen.
There you go.
Oh, she's covering herself up.
In case somebody saw that Mustang around that creek, around that house, that she could say, look, I told you, it just happens to be similar to mine, but it wasn't mine. You're dealing with someone who has been manipulating all components of her life. By doing that, what did she do? Well, she made her and her husband, ex-husband of Leanne, the last people to see Leanne alive.
Were the kids present when this so-called man showed up with Leanne?
Yes.
Were they, and they corroborated?
They
also?
corroborated it. In fact, decision was made the following day to bring them back to the police department and do a formal interview, independent of each other. We've separated them. That went the way that I expected, with manipulation and control and coaching with the children.
You could tell they were told what to say.
You could tell they were coached. And the reason you could tell was the vocabulary. The words they
Yeah.
used was not something an 11-year-old and a 14-year-old most of the time would never use.
Yeah.
And we just kind of looked at it and said, do you see what they're saying here? Is that normal? Is that how you would refer to somebody? And the comment was, the person that was with Leanne at their house that night had salt and pepper hair.
No. I have an 11-year-old.
11-year-olds don't
Don't say
describe
salt
an
and
adult
pepper.
male
Yeah.
No.
or if anyone with salt and pepper hair.
And each child said salt and pepper?
All 4 of the family members at different events where they were separated so they couldn't hear the other one used the term salt and pepper hair. It was evident that,
Yeah.
that these kids were coached.
Yeah.
And the question you have to ask is why? Why would you have to coach if, in fact, it actually happened that this person shows up with Leanne and asks for a Klonopin?
At this point, had you already received information from Leanne's mom that she had been awakened by a phone call at like 5 o'clock in the morning?
Oh, yeah, we did. And again, I think this is where with this information, I don't want to say we discounted it, but we had to assume that was actually Leanne that made that call at 5:23 a.m. On that morning, early morning hours, and the call woke her up out of a dead sleep. In fact, she showed me the caller ID, and I photographed it with the timestamp of the call and the number, which was Leanne's cell phone. But the voice on the other line, according to Leanne's mom, was kind of emotional. It was hard to understand, and it said something to the effect of, "Mom, please help me. Mom, I'm scared." And then it kind of went away and then disconnected the line. She told me that when she heard that, she thought, well, I wonder if that was Leanne. Then she thought, well, it could be her. She was unsure if it was her or not. And so she later made a call, decided she would call a neighbor to go and do a check on the house to see if Leanne was over at the house.
What did they see when they went to the house?
She went up on the front stoop on the porch, and she could look in through a side window, and she said she saw a lamp. She could, there was curtains up, but she could see a lamp laying on the floor. And that's pretty much all she relayed back to her mother. Hindsight's 20/20. I think a lot of times people's lives are a little more complicated in what they experience and what they know of their family. So maybe there's things that in itself would not send up a red flag. Maybe it was just some situations, the way the house was kept. She didn't see it as a big deal. Did she call 911? Did she call the police and ask them to go out and do a welfare check or check the house because of the lamp? She did not.
After interviewing Leanne's mother, Joe then made his way to Leanne's home to assess the scene where the break-in occurred. And that's where we find ourselves next.
It was evident to myself and to Detective Mark Bossell, who worked this case side by side with me with the sheriff's office. It was clear to us that this was a staged crime scene. And what made it staged was there were certain pieces of furniture, photographs, things on the wall that a burglar would absolutely not take the time to physically destroy. And they were thrown on the ground and shattered. And what were they? They were photographs of these children growing up in their cheerleading outfit, their elementary school pictures, things like that. So this basically was clear that whoever did this had some kind of emotional rage or emotional issue with this family.
Knowing that you had this crime scene and then you are interviewing Kimberly, did you see any of that rage transfer over into that interview? Did you start thinking, well, maybe you're involved here?
No, absolutely not. And this is somebody, I think, that understands manipulation. She saw us as the impediment or the threat that's going to bring this house of cards tumbling down. So she was doing everything she could. And Mike, you can attest to this. I know you've seen this, where a suspect will almost overly compensate with sugar and honey,
Ingratiate
herself and just be so cooperative and so nice. Yeah, there was not a sign of aggression, of control. Now I say control. She wanted to get her story out there, which that's common, because she wanted to send us down, a rabbit hole. And that was her whole objective, was to put us on the trail of anything that is not Kimberly Mangrum.
So what eventually broke the case open? Did anyone confess? How did you find out?
There was a lot of procedural matters that were going on with the crime lab, with evidence, with interviews. It started coming together when we knew that we had found, processing the crime scene, the blood evidence on the outside door of the house, on the storm door going into the house, a very small drop of blood. And then they found a cigarette butt in the backyard that they took in. Again, you don't know what it means. They take it in. We did find a broken window that somebody had used to gain access to the house, which means they would have to handle some glass. There's a large shard of glass on the interior of that broken window. And when I got with the crime lab, they had told me that they had developed a partial palm print from that shard of glass, that large piece of glass. So we had a cigarette butt for DNA, we had blood evidence for DNA, and we had a partial palm print that was used to whoever came in through that window entrance. So we're waiting to determine who all these belong to.
As you're waiting for the DNA results to come back, you have that 6-month period. Are you still engaging with potential suspects? Are you interviewing, or are they?
It was an ongoing circus, that 6 months. And what I mean by that is you could tell that there was manipulation going on. We had calls coming into Crime Stoppers in Nashville, giving information, anonymous, of course, because that's what Crime Stoppers does. So it is a conduit a lot of times for people to put false information out there, saying that so-and-so was involved in her murder, and this is the person that was last seen, when it started naming all this stuff. Well, you cannot just shelve that because it's exculpatory. You have to work it, you have to put resources on it, you have to run it down as a lead. So we were chasing false leads, false information, and we always felt like that this was coming from Kimberly Mangrum. We were running down fictitious leads, I guess the best way to put it, and that's what it was. But we did have some really productive interviews, and one was with her boyfriend that was with her that night. So we were able to develop a pattern of where she was, who she was with, and you know, when you go back to the last people to see her alive in that 8 to 10 hour period. And he was very cooperative. He absolutely did not fit the description of the salt and pepper hair male. He talked about being with her and what she had done. She met them at a bar, watched a football game at the bar. They had some chicken and some appetizers. And she may have drank, he said he knows she didn't drink more than 1 or 2 beers. And we even pulled the receipt from that table to show and talk to the waitress, and said 2 beers. So she was not intoxicated. Mm-hmm. And again, you have to check all these boxes, because somebody could allege that this was a motor vehicle accident from drunk driving, and that's how she ended up down there.
But it's also kind of diminishing the statements that all 4 gave about her behavior when she was there, and about all that,
demanding drugs.
Yeah, I mean, it just kind of shot that out of the water in a sense, because with her behavior there, she wasn't in that state of mind based on one of the last witnesses that saw her.
It was so important to hear that, because it gave myself and Detective Bossell, we basically discounted at that point all this talk about her drug use, alcohol use, mm-hmm. that she was out of control. This high-risk behavior that could have caused this to happen. Mm. That's what it did, and that's why it was so important.
And didn't he tell you one other thing, which you would think maybe is benign when someone's talking, but didn't he say she wasn't that hungry because she had eaten a salad earlier?
He did, and he told us that they brought some appetizers to the table, but she didn't really eat a lot of them, because she's told them she had already eaten and she had a salad that afternoon.
So the food in her stomach is going to be very important, or would be, in the event if she was murdered died within a certain time period.
It's so difficult to ever get a medical examiner to give you a definitive time of death. We all know that. So I'm sitting in my office and I'm trying to figure out how can I try to get the factual basis of a time of death for Leanne, of what actually happened at that point in time, and when was she actually murdered. And I remembered that conversation with him. But I remember going through the house and I saw a receipt from Kroger with a salad, a bag salad, and it had a timestamp on it.
Very important.
So I knew that was the salad when it was bought, and she tells him that she ate it that afternoon. So we're saying about 6 o'clock, 5 to 6 o'clock that afternoon, she consumed the salad. So then I called the medical examiner, and I asked him, does he, in his notes, can he go back and tell me what was in the stomach of Leanne, their stomach contents? And he calls me back and he tells me, you've got chicken, you had carrots, you had some lettuce, some things like that. And I thought, that's perfect. That's exactly what we were told that she had consumed. But then I remembered that the salad had to be consumed about 6 o'clock. So then I asked him, what's the total digestion time for food to digest completely through the system? Mainly, he said 6 to 8 hours, you can have a pretty full digestive process. So that tells me that for those items to still be in her system at autopsy, she was not alive at 5:23 in the morning to make that phone call. That would have been 12 hours, almost 12 hours from the time that we determined she consumed that salad.
So if the salad contents in her stomach would have been fully digested, that would have put her time of death around 2 o'clock in the morning.
Yep.
So we're thinking now that she was dead by midnight. There's no possible way that she would have been able to call her mother at 5:23 in the morning because she was already dead.
Correct. Absolutely. That was, in my opinion, that was the first major game changer in the case, where we were able to show that they were manipulating and they were controlling this, that it didn't happen the way they said. And then we started focusing on the DNA evidence from the blood, from the cigarette, from the latent palm print. So what do we do next? Well, we have to get a search warrant to get samples of DNA. What we expected from the results of the DNA, it matched. And when I say it matched, the DNA from the cigarette came back to Kimberly. The blood on the door came back to Terry Jr., her son, and the latent partial palm print on the glass, the large piece of glass, came back to Alicia. So we had we had 3 of the 4 at the residence.
So Alicia went through that window that was broken?
She did.
And that's the little girl. That's her daughter.
She's the smallest, so they were able to pick her up and put her in after the glass was broken. And she reached out and picked up and grabbed a large piece of glass and moved it so she didn't get cut.
All under the direction of Kimberly.
Yep. And Kimberly's was present. So then we go to, okay, do we get arrest warrants? Absolutely. First we thought, who's the weak link to get who's going to break in this situation? So we knew Terry was back in school. So I went ahead and got a warrant for his arrest. Me and Detective Bostel go to the school, get with the school resource officer and the principal. Explained him the situation. He was the weak link in that sense. He acknowledged that he killed his mother at that time. Yeah, he did. But you know what he did? He separated all other parties of the crime except himself. And where would he get this idea that he would be held responsible and his stepmother and father would not be involved in this or pulled into this? He said, I did it. I'm the only one who did it, and no one else was involved.
He's taken the fall.
He's taken the fall. Why would he take the fall? He's a juvenile. She convinced him, look, you're, 16, 15, 16 at the time? You know, you'll only be in juvenile custody for about 2 or 3 years, and then you'll get out. Well, that's not the way the state of Tennessee deals with violent crime with the juveniles. So he learned real fast that no, you're looking at life in prison. We're going to transfer you to adult court. Yeah. And it was at that point we started realizing that we were getting the truth. It was finally starting to come in. So we serve the arrest warrants. We take them into custody. They're all given a bond, and they make bond. It's reduced during some hearings, and so they got where they could make bond. And so we're ready for the trial. And we knew that she was not around as much as we were kind of keeping an eye on her. And the next court hearing, she was in the wind. So she absconded. She was gone. And at this point, we're like, let's put her on the top 10. I felt that she was such a threat to society. She was such a manipulator that I wasn't going to be hunting this person for the next 10 years. So I was moving on as fast as I could. So got her put on our top 10, the TBI's top 10 most wanted, got the media attention on it, got a physical description, got an idea of everything. And I get a call late Friday night from a Metro police officer from one of the precincts. And he said that he had got information from somebody that saw it and said, I know exactly where she was at. She was down on Murfreesboro Road. She was seen with a person in this type of vehicle, gave a physical description of the car, and didn't have a tag number, but had a really good description of this car. So we took that, we looked at it, and we felt like it was viable information. We felt it was reliable. So then we put that information, send a bolo out, because the information also came that this car had Kentucky tags, and the person driving it was supposedly from southern Kentucky. That's all we knew. So we put a bolo out with special attention to the southern Kentucky area, Bowling Green, and that general area. And I'm awakened about 4 in the morning, the following morning, and said, we got her. They found her at a Hotel 8. A police officer doing his due diligence saw the bolo, did a canvass of the local motels, drove through and spotted the car. And what does he do? He follows up like he's supposed to. He goes to the clerk, who's in this room. They give him a description. They knock on the door. The hotel rooms is one door, one way in, one way out. So other than a bathroom, back window, there she was in the room. Took her into custody, called. We did an extradition, brought her back to Tennessee. And at this point, she sits in jail. She's not going to get a bond anymore. The 11-year-old was offered immunity for her testimony. And once we were preparing for trial to tell her story as to what happened. And during that process, she became very emotional, and it was difficult for her to testify. So we made a decision as a prosecutor and their family, Leanne's family, to make a deal with the son. And we agreed that we would charge him with second-degree murder and in exchange for truthful testimony, and which he did. He testified in the trial against Kimberly.
So you get the testimony from the son. Mm-hmm. You also now have a statement from the daughter. Mm-hmm. What happened? What happened that night? What was the story they told you?
What happened that night was that they made a decision at the behest of their stepmother, Kimberly Mangrum, to go find Leanne. It was time. They were tired of her. She had to be dealt with. So they went to her house to try to confront her. She's not home. Then they find her. They see her on the road coming home from the night, and it's about a little before midnight, and she's on her way home. So they follow her. They get behind her, and they follow her into the driveway. She pulls in the driveway. She sees who they are. She sees it's her children, and she sees Kimberly. She wasn't concerned about her children as much as she was Kimberly because of the past events. She locks her doors. At that point, a bat is taken out, and they proceed to start breaking the windows in her vehicle, in her Jeep. Breaks the driver's side, breaks the passenger side. We found piles of shards of glass in her driveway at that location. As they basically open the door, drag her out physically, pull her out in the yard, and begin to assault her extensively with the bat. I learned that Kimberly made sure that both the children took turns at hitting her with the bat, because she wanted to make sure they were all in this together. There was not going to be just one involved. Mm-hmm. That way that she could control them and manipulate them.
Yep. Pure evil.
So they beat her to a point of where she was unconscious. They put her in a vehicle.
Her own Jeep?
Yeah, they put her in a Jeep, and they're driving her. The son at this point, Terry's driving her, and they drive to a location where they're going to stage a scene and put her in the creek. They drive it to the creek. They go down the steep embankment down to the water's edge. They open the door. Instead of just pulling her out and placing her in the water, they grab her by her hair, and that's why the patch of hair came out and was left on the shoreline. In doing so, they also pulled, and it brought out shards of broken glass that were inside the Jeep and brought it out to the shoreline. So we found broken glass at the shore and at her house, so we knew the two were related. So he drags her out of the car, leaves her on the shoreline. He gets in the Jeep, which is four-wheel drive, and he puts it in low gear, and he decides he's driving it into the water at the direction of his stepmom. You see the tire spinning marks, the indentions in the creek gravel where it's spun, and he finally gets it to engage, and he goes off in the water. Well, it's dark. They had no idea how deep the water was. They were thinking that it would be deep enough that it would submerge, and it didn't. So then they have to figure out, now how do we get her back to the car in some capacity where it looks like that this was an accident. Kimberly comes up with another idea of what she wants to do to show that she is a person who lives a high-risk life. She's involved in alcohol and drug use. She takes Klonopin and she starts pushing him, forcing him down the throat of Leanne, trying to. And then she tells the son to put her back in the water, put her in the water. So he drags her into the water, and he places her near the door of the vehicle. And so she's there, and he comes back out, and they're talking. And this is where it gets tragic. And if it can get any more tragic, we learn that as they're on the creek bank, and she's out there in the water, she starts to move. She's still alive. So you see movement, gurgling, and so Kimberly directs Terry to go out there and finish her. And he goes out in the water, and he takes his knee and he puts it on her head, and he holds her down under the water till she stops moving. So he has to deal with this the rest of his life. This was a case that I've never seen anything else like it. I've seen a lot of evil, a lot of bad people, but she absolutely stands out as somebody that had no redeeming qualities. I think that you have to understand that this woman, she absolutely convinced these two that their mother was the Antichrist. She was not worthy of sharing the same oxygen that they shared. And so they had to take her out. It was an ongoing, continuous berating and belittling of their mother to a point where they decided, look, if we're going to survive or we're going to be part of this family, they grew to accept it. And that was the sad part.
It's a simple, we've seen in history, it's a simple case of brainwashing by someone evil. And she was the evil one who was brainwashing these two kids.
She did. There is absolutely no doubt that that's what she did.
Curiosity, though, is where is the husband in all this? Had they separated? Were they still together? Was he still protecting her?
No, I don't think he was protecting her at this point. I think once the wheels started coming off pretty quick and it was clear where this was going, he distances himself from her. But that being said, he still never came to the table and cooperated in any way.
But he was slightly involved.
He helped cover up the crime after the fact, obfuscate, denying activity, giving false information, things like that. It falls in the category of moral indifference. If moral indifference was a crime in a lot of ways, he would be on death row. And last, I think one thing I think about, and I remember this, I heard this song come on the radio about 5 years ago. And I heard this song so much growing up, but it just, all of a sudden, I saw an image of Kimberly Mangrum. And this is the song from Johnny Cash and Waylon Jennings, "There Ain't No Good in an Evil-Hearted Woman." And that's what it was.